Well, let me pose a question to you then. Why does breaking through this dualistic concept of the self reduce the suffering that goes along with the idea of the self? What does it all have to do with suffering? Those of you who have read ahead a little bit or are sort of seeing into this intuitively, what do you think?
It means you can be detached from your sort of overbearing emotions, I guess.
Okay, and the word detached is another misunderstood idea. But yes, we can let go a little bit of that we think we absolutely need for our survival and for our security, and moreover, for our happiness, right? What else? Throw more in on that. That's a really good point. Go ahead.
I was listening to the radio the other day, and this guy was talking about how like life is suffering or something. And he was saying
That's
that,
Buddha's first of the Four Noble Truths. Yeah.
And he was saying that like knowing that you'll suffer throughout your life frees you from the pain that it will bring once it happens.
Well, if we want, by saying life is suffering, and that, by the way, is where the Four Noble Truths start. So just, I don't want anybody to be confused. We're talking about these 3 marks of existence. Suffering really takes us into the famous Four Noble Truths, Buddha's first set of formal teachings. The statement, life is suffering, is also a misunderstood one. People think of it as something very pessimistic, but he wasn't talking in a pessimistic voice at all. In fact, he wanted to point the way to liberation. He wanted to help us by showing us our wrongful attachments to things because of our wrongful perception of reality. He wanted to show us how we can free ourselves from much unnecessary suffering. It's like that expression you might have heard, pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional. Indeed, we inflict a lot of that on ourselves, and we had fun with that. You know, the other day we were talking about how silly we are. When we're kids, we just want to be big kids, and when we're big kids, it's still not good enough. We just want to get to high school, and we all know high school sucks. And as soon as we're in high school, we want to get out of high school, and as soon as we transfer, we want to graduate, and then we want a home, and then all we can think about is vacation, and we're always just kind of reaching. And in the meantime, we're trying to fill ourselves up with a multitude of distractions that we think will enrich our sense of self, whether it be the newest computer gadget or the newest shoes or the clothes, or even if it's a partner, you know, who's got a good reputation, and that boosts your identity quite a bit, you know, or an expensive car, or any of these things that we reach toward, or to use this word attachment, any of these things that we attach to, thinking that we will become better, that we'll get to a point where everything will just gel and be perfect. But it never lasts. And so we continue longing for more, longing for something else, longing for the newer thing, longing for the better computer, longing for the newer car, longing for a better TV, longing for this distraction, trying to fill ourselves up with one distraction after another. That's really the kind of suffering that better captures that angst that is optional. We don't have to suffer with that angst. Of course, there is lots of stuff that's inevitable. We will lose people we love. And we talked about this the other day. Life is full of misery. A lot of stuff that we can't seem to fix. Political atrocities, wars and genocides, personal tragedies. There is a lot of stuff that's inevitable. Yet why is it that some people manage to be joyful? And it's not that we shouldn't care about those things, Because if we do care about those things, we probably find some sort of solution or some way to make ourselves valuable, some way to donate, some way to help, and that makes us feel useful. That, in fact, makes us happier. We don't feel so much despair when we're active. We can actually do something about the causes that are important to us. And ironically, the people that are active tend to be the happiest. Why is it that some people manage to be happy, even in the face of tragedy? People who have lost everything and yet manage to turn it around and go on and inspire others. Right? This is the kind of suffering Buddha wanted us to look at. The angst that we bring upon ourselves. That chronic low-grade anxiety of reaching, wanting, thinking mistakenly that at some point we'll have rainbows and everything will just gel, right? Everything will be perfect. Everything will be idyllic. But we spend our whole lives that way. You know, and then we get old and we say, oh, gee, where did the time go? I wish I was young again. That is really the kind of suffering that he wanted us to look at. And my question for you all is, how is this angst, this suffering? And again, it was his mission to point the way out. But how does this angst, this chronic spinning that we get into, alleviated by looking deeply in the way that Thich Nhat Hanh nudged us to do, by seeing reality and seeing ourselves as impermanent? That's a really good point, because when we're steeped in this dualistic frame of mind, me versus other, I tend to become very emotional, correct me if I'm not paraphrasing you right, about things that I think were done to me. Why did you do that to me? And I take things personally. You took that. Why did you say that? You looked at me like, why did you look at me like that, right? Is that the kind of stuff?
Yeah.
We get very defensive. Could I elaborate and say defensive? Emotional was the word. But when we break through that dualistic paradigm, a lot of that just goes away. We see it as sort of silly. We realize it wasn't personal. You know, I've written about the example of traffic before, and I think it's something we can all relate to. You know, someone cuts you off, or someone refuses to let you merge, and you've got to get on the 405, you know, and this turkey just pulls up ahead of him even further and he doesn't let you in, right? And we're, I'll show him, and we speed up and we yell certain things and we make certain motions and we get all excited and we're angry and we're fuming. But you know, first of all, clearly that's suffering, right? And it's the kind of specialized suffering Buddha called anger, that fills us all up in the modern world, as if we're so different than the ancients. But you know, it's a kind of suffering that poisons us on the inside, and we go home and we take it out on everyone else and we make everyone else suffer too, right? But let's bring it to point. When I break through that me versus other framework, I stop taking it so personally. Compassion wells up in place of that anger. I start to see through it. I am, in fact, in Thich Nhat Hanh's words, looking deeply. I probably feel sorry for that guy. And not in a patronizing way either. I'm probably able to say to myself, you know, that poor guy probably has a jerk for a boss. He's probably late to work, you know, and he's totally stressed out. And he lives like this. And he's probably got high blood pressure and who knows what else in my imagination. But it helps me understand. It helps me understand that he couldn't recognize my face to save his life. I'm nothing to him. It wasn't about me. It was just a car. He was protecting what's his. He was defensive. Could have been me, could have been anybody. It wasn't about me. And that understanding is like magic. It's like clicking refresh on your computer. Oh, I feel differently, you know? Go. I hope you get there, buddy, you know? And You're chilling out, and you make it, you don't make it, but it's okay. You know, it kind of breaks through the defensiveness that comes from separateness that leads to anger, that is one of those poisons because it spreads like weeds everywhere and touches everything in your life and just kind of spoils the whole affair. That's why Buddha looked upon anger as one of the 3 poisons. It just kind of poisons, throwing toxic acid on everything. But deeply looking diffuses that. I'm less protective about my space, me. And you just insulted me, and do you know who you're talking to? It's that do you know who I am thing. You know, you're able to, all of that just kind of melts away. And you realize we're all doing the same thing. We're all caught up, you know, in this way of life, and we're all rushing, and we're a little more forgiving. That's a great, great insight, and a good way of putting it. You know, not taking things personally. So what we're doing is we're making a connection between the essence of the 4 Noble Truths, which is the observation that we are full of angst and just this kind of discontent. And I want something else, and I just want to graduate. I just want to, if only, you know, this would make it all better. That angst. Dukkha, that Buddha referred to as suffering, that is alleviated when we begin to realize that it's caused by my clinging, my refusal to let go, not only of the stuff that I mistakenly think of as mine, but of the notion of the self. Because when I let go of that comes from wrongful perception anyway, I let go of all of the fear and defensiveness that go along with it. We fear death, we fear injury, we fear doom, but we just saw that there's no such thing as death. What is there to fear? Those are just names, like the lightning we slap on something that's more like a verb than a noun. Death, we slap a name on this event that's not one event after all. Birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, every moment of your life. You're gaining new blood cells and losing millions every moment. You're gaining new ideas and shedding old beliefs, making new friends. How much are you gaining and losing at any moment? Right? Hair, skin cells, friends, weight. Birth and death, birth and death. Everything that happens to you changes you. You just don't see it any more than you see the wrinkles forming on your face. Right? Every single day. Birth and death, birth and death. And so when you start to let go, all of the fear, all of the greed, all of the anger that surrounded that notion of a self starts to disappear. That's really the 4 Noble Truths, although we haven't gotten there yet and put them all on the board. The 4 Noble Truths, life is suffering, but the way out is the realization that we've encountered today. That I don't need to cling to what I thought I needed to cling to what I thought would give me security. And once I start to soften my grip on that notion of a separate self, and everything else besides, I'm able to live softer, easier, less resistance, less opposition, less antagonism. Yeah? That's the connection between suffering and emptiness. Emptiness is just deeply looking, it's just seeing through. And so Anatman isn't no self, it's just no self in the way you thought. Emptiness isn't really empty of a self, it's just empty of ideas. You are, you aren't. It's like the rainbow. It is, but it also isn't. Go touch the rainbow, you can't. It's there in some sense. But it's not there apart from its causes. The sun, the moisture, and all the right angles, right? It is, it isn't. If you look closer, it disappears altogether.